This session this morning is Tech Approaches for KM. My name is Juanita Richardson, and I'm your moderator all day today. We have three panelists. Disha Solanaki and Rowena Leung are from Liberty Mutual Insurance. They'll give us our first presentation, and then we'll have Rebecca Miksch, very close, who will speak after that. And we're holding all questions again to the end, so at 12:25, I'll stand up, and that'll be your cue to potentially start answering our panelists' questions. So with any further ado, please let me turn it over to our speakers.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Disha Solanki, and I am a product owner within the engineering experience at Liberty Mutual. A little bit about us, in case our marketing department has missed you and you haven't seen any of our advertisement yet. But we're from Liberty Mutual, which is a 100-year-old Fortune 100 company, which is a global leader in property and casualty. And we have about 50,000 employees worldwide and 5,000 plus technology workers also globally. And that's our core primary audience, so you're going to hear more about that particular piece. But I'll let Rowena introduce herself now.
Hey, everyone. I'm Rowena Leung. I'm a senior product designer on our Tech KM product team. I do customer research, design, and usability for the product. And there was a third name on the program, Justin Broughton. He's our aligned architect. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it today, but he is just as critical. And I think his spirit will come through in our slides, I hope. So for today, we've broken our talk out into two sections. First is where we started with Tech KM at Liberty, and then we'll go into iterative development and how we went from good to great. And Disha will kick us off with where we started.
All right. Firstly, to situate you kind of in our landscape where we began, as I mentioned, we are a global company with over 5,000 tech employees worldwide. And like our former CIO liked to say, that we're a tech company that sells insurance. And that's kind of the spirit that we bring to the work that we do here. And especially given the pace of the insurance industry and our competitors and the external pressures of macroeconomics, climate change, inflation, et cetera, tech is really the key enabler of business results. So that could be the difference between being a top 3 P&C carrier versus a top 5 P&C carrier. And a McKinsey study talked about how knowledge workers spend 19% of their time just gathering and finding information. So imagine if an engineer is doing that instead of hands-on coding and writing software to deliver underwriting value. And that's how you kind of see with the yellow-coded portions here is how critical knowledge management is within the tech software development lifecycle. And that's essentially, again, the key enabler and differentiator. It's really integrated within the engineering experience. And the other piece that I wanted to call out here, and let's see if this works. It does. So two terms that I wanted to mention, and it's just kind of how we work, is we operate within a two-sided platform of consumers and providers. And again, you'll hear this terminology through our presentation, where essentially the same person can be both a provider of knowledge and a consumer. What I mean by that is an engineer could be an expert and a subject matter expert and a knowledge provider within, say, database. But she might also need security architecture information. So they're playing dual roles. And within our world, in an ideal world, again, you're both, everyone within those 5,000 employees is both a consumer and a provider of knowledge. So that's kind of the distributed knowledge ecosystem. So now that you know kind of where we were, where are we going? So our goal and our vision is essentially to help the technology community find trusted knowledge when and where they need it. What does this mean? Let's break this down a little. So technology community, that can really mean anybody who is in any of the product delivery roles. And that could mean an architect, an engineer, a product manager, a UX designer, or anybody who is aspiring to be in these roles even. So that's really the gamut that we run in terms of who our audience is. Findability has been hard within Liberty Mutual, and that's because and we hear this all the time, there are 15 places where I can go to find information. And say I have a question, and I went to 5 places, and I got 3 different answers, and now 2 of them are contradictory, and 1 of them is 5 years old. Which one's correct? And that's kind of our central problem of trust. We need one place to go to and make sure that when I get that answer, it's the correct answer that I can rely on and I can trust. And lastly, when and where you need it. And that could mean in context, where maybe you're within the software marketplace and you're looking up information or an API. You want that knowledge that's in context in there. We want to meet users where they are, where work happens. And I want to also highlight that it's not just documentation that we are talking about when we say knowledge ecosystem. It's all of these other yellow thought bubbles up here that really make up the knowledge ecosystem that we're driving towards. So now that you've seen our vision, Rowena is going to talk to you about some opportunities that we're chasing to achieve these.
So there's some big opportunities both on the consumer side and the provider side. I'll start with the consumers. Enabling findability and discovery. This is one Disha touched on. Just having that one place to go, that one place to start to look for knowledge, because as we've done research and talked to our customers, that's one thing that we keep hearing over and over, that people just don't know where to start to look for information. Surfacing knowledge in context. We have employee metadata, and we can leverage that to surface knowledge in context in different places. So if we know that you are an engineer in a certain department, we might surface different content, like different recommendations than if you were say a data engineer in a different department. And on the provider side, we want to ensure content quality. I think one thing that's unique about our ecosystem is that our knowledge providers are not dedicated knowledge providers. Like, they're not content strategists or technical writers. They're largely engineers who do documentation as one of the many tasks in their job. And so they would like us to give them guidance on how to create good documentation, like what good looks like, examples of that, and how to make it more consumable to their audience, which is other development teams at Liberty. And along with that, we have a big opportunity to create a culture of knowledge, because knowledge is not often seen as significant as other engineering tasks, even though it's something that they have to do. And so we have a big opportunity to mature the knowledge management practices within the tech org, and to support the self-identified knowledge champions in the company already through best practices, templates, and other resources that they can use. There's also, implementation-wise, how might we use generative AI to augment how we deliver on these opportunities? I know we've been hearing a ton about generative AI. That's not the focus of our talk, but it's definitely an opportunity that we're looking into as well. And it will just help us deliver on the opportunities, not like replace what we're doing. So for today, I wanted to focus on how we're tackling these opportunities today through the way that we work. And we do that by bringing perspectives together. We work in an agile product team, and that means there are various roles we have that focus on different aspects to make a successful product. So we have product, which is represented by Disha. Product focuses on building the right thing, creating customer and business value. There's engineering, which is Justin, who is here. And he focuses on feasibility, building the thing right. And I represent, so engineering is Justin and the developers. They're like a little band. And I'm user experience, and I build the thing that users love. We also incorporate the customer perspective. During the process of building out new capabilities, we'll get feedback either before we build, during, or after, depending on how much we need to learn before we can build the capability. So throughout, we're always reaching out to the customer and getting their feedback, so we can make sure we're not just building something and then the customers don't use it because it wasn't what they needed. So we want to avoid that by iterating, by putting something out sooner to prove out value and not delivering all at once. So we'll talk about 3 major versions of our product and how we iterated toward them to go from good to great. And Disha will start us off with the iterations.
So one of the tenets of Agile, as Rowena mentioned, is iterative development. It's just how we work. And this gives you a snapshot of kind of how we worked through that. And so we started as a wee baby egg in our static documentation site, and then we evolved to a knowledge platform. And we are aspiring to move on to the next version of the evolution, which is a fully realized knowledge ecosystem. And we'll kind of talk you through all of these stages that we worked through. So this is our baby egg stage. We are in a static documentation site, and it's called Knowledge Center. In fact, this is probably one of 50 different microsites that exists within Liberty Mutual, each with their own bespoke version of knowledge. And this is also one of 3 different knowledge centers that are within Liberty that I'm aware of. And that's in addition to all of the other enterprise-level tools like Wiki and OneDrive and SharePoint, so the list goes on. And you're probably wondering, why does that happen? So we're primarily working with engineers, and show of hands, have folks worked with engineers here in the team? See quite a few. So you probably know that they're very passionate about solving problems. And at Liberty, we want to encourage and provide that flexibility to the engineering community and the technology community to solve problems as they see fit. And that's kind of how we've ended up with these multiple versions of solutions. And while we can debate the merits of that approach, one thing is clear, is that it leads to the problem of sprawl, which is kind of where we're at here. And one of the other reasons why we have these microsites is because of a specific requirement that we heard from the community. It was an assumption, spoiler alert, which is of docs as code. Now, what does that mean? We've heard that technology, I'll just use engineers as a general term for now. Engineers like writing code like they write software, which means using tools of development, such as GitHub. They like writing in Markdown language, and they want to deploy documentation like they deploy code. Again, as I said, that was kind of our assumption. Spoiler alert, we'll just place that sticky right here and come back to it later. But even just looking at this site, you can see that it's not really well organized. There's not much in terms of an information architecture. It's a bunch of links on a page. We haven't done a whole lot of user research. There's not much marketing input. It says getting started, but we're not quite sure what we're getting started with. There's not guided information to take you to the stage that you want to get to. So, Rowena, what happened next?
Glad you asked, Disha. So last year, it's a little context, our team formed last year. So we were a little baby knowledge management team in the space. We took the we took 10 weeks at the beginning to define the work that we're doing by going through a discovery process. And at a high level, our goals were to define the scope of the problem space. So I talked about a couple of the big opportunities that we had on both sides. And even within that, it's like, where do we start? Like, what makes the most sense? What value can we provide? And so we wanted to take this time to understand and define the scope for ourselves. Another goal was to understand the current experience of our users, and we did that by conducting landscape interviews with both consumers and providers. So we conducted open-ended interviews just to make sure that we knew the challenges and pain points people were facing, and that we weren't just building off of assumptions. And then from there, we could prioritize work based on having a shared understanding of product goals and user needs. So this screenshot I'm sharing, it's hard to read, but really the point is we had a draft plan for the 10 weeks, so split up into 5 2-week sprints. And we iterated on the plan as we went along. So there were activities planned, but then as we went through some of them, it felt like it made more sense to do some other ones. So we pivoted and used our time differently. So for example, we had a product visioning workshop planned as part of this initial draft. And that would have been solutioning for opportunities. But instead of doing that, we decided to use the time to plan and conduct more research specifically on information architecture, because as Disha was sharing like 2 slides ago, we really didn't have much of an information architecture. It was just, here's all the different unorganized types of content. So we needed higher level categorization, and we wanted to do that based on user input so that we were using an information architecture that resonated with our users. So that's just one example of how we conducted our discovery. It's really just about taking the time and space to define things and align on our goals as opposed to like specific activities. So at the end of this process, we had a knowledge management strategy that had the full product team's input and was informed by research, and that considered different aspects of the knowledge opportunities that we decided to focus on. And so from this point, we could begin building the next version of our product, which is Knowledge Center V2. Yay. So this is a homepage of the knowledge platform that we created as V2. We're now in the baby emu stage. We've hatched, we're baby emus now. And a couple slides ago, when we showed what was the homepage, you can see that this is very different because we've structured the content in a more consumable way, and that was based on input from the users that I just mentioned. And also having this homepage was an important step towards clarifying the purpose of our platform and what it encompassed, because that was a question we got pretty regularly, since like we're not the only documentation site. So it's like what belongs here versus Wiki versus other places. So we needed a homepage to orient users and kind of bring them in. A couple of highlights from V2. We made self-service easier for providers. And this is one big part of Knowledge Center being a platform that serves both consumers and providers, because the first version, we really didn't have a workflow to allow people to contribute. And so we basically, in this version, we created a workflow that would let them do it self-service. I will quickly go to the next slide. And actually, let's just talk about adoption.
So we made all these changes, we feel great about ourselves, but what do our users think? And you can kind of get a gauge from this slide here that the numbers are trending upwards, and the point of this is that we were able to prove out the value of on our investment. So we'll move on to the last slide here, or last 2 slides here, is the idea is we want to iterate and move on to the next level. So as you're looking at all of these features that Rowena talked about, you're probably thinking, hey, this sounds like your garden variety CMS. Why are you building it? And again, remember that sticky that we placed about Dox's code? What we learned is actually that was not a requirement that the entire community really wanted. We wanted to lower the barrier to entry, which is why we're now moving on to a enterprise-wide CMS that Liberty is bringing on, which allows us to focus on those differentiating or special sauce capabilities, as we also heard yesterday, and moving up higher in the value chain. This is essentially, again, an amalgamation of what you've already heard us talk about, which is giving users a single starting point, which is if you're new to Liberty, here's where you can go to get started, and also to meet users where they are based on the personalized facts that we know about them. And while they might seem like they're contradictory, they're actually complementary, is we're doing a yes and, kind of like improv. And of course, no presentation would be complete without a GPT plug, so this is ours, where we've had several successful experiments where we were able to use our own internal Liberty GPT to prove out, again, the value by doing things like extraction of metadata via AI, and also pointing GPT at an existing document and saying, hey, make this better, make it more readable, etc. So our next stage is utilizing those experiments and then making them more official by going through our internal R&D approval process. And Rowena's going to...
No, we'll have to wrap it up. I'm sorry, because we have... Thank you very much. And so now the next speaker is Rebecca Miksch.
Thank you, everybody. I guess it's afternoon at this point. Good afternoon. Sorry that I'm standing between you and lunch. I'm going to be speaking with you about Wipfli Knowledge Search. So let's see here. Wipfli is a tax, audit, and accounting firm with a global footprint. We are in the top 20 CPA firms nationally, and at Wipfli, I am their enterprise architect for knowledge. So I sit on a strategic team. I consult across the organization on our knowledge efforts. I'm also our product manager for Wipfli Knowledge Search and Wipfli KMS. So today I'm going to give you a brief background of what this actually is. I'll talk through the process and project that we went to select and implement a new technology, and then I'll be sharing about our wins, challenges, and a little bit about perspective that we learned. So let's get started. In 2017, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was released, and our head of tax decided that we needed to be able to answer questions that we were getting from clients, because they had a lot of them, and honestly, we did too. And as a reaction to that, we stood up Wipfli Knowledge Search, which allowed us to proactively share content, as well as what we called Wipfli Knowledge Request, a place where we could answer questions on demand. And both of those together were Wipfli KMS. Before too long, Wipfli KMS expanded not just to include TCJA content, but to cover content across all of our tax areas from our tax experts, as well as our audit and accounting team, and content from Wipfli Service Center, which is our client-facing help desk. I apologize, I'm gonna have to look back and forth. But our great solution, honestly, wasn't so great. What you're seeing here is the interface that we had for creating articles and responding to requests. And if the number of words on the page doesn't tip you off, everything was being done in a box about this big. If you've ever tried to write a Word document in maybe like a 30-second portion of your page, it gets pretty challenging pretty quickly. In addition to that, there was no spell check, which doesn't sound like a big deal until you don't have it. And we weren't able to do some basic things like putting images in line in the text. Honestly, it wasn't just about our authoring experience. Our searchers had a really hard time finding articles, and when they got to them, because of that authoring experience, most of the articles looked like this. That blue circle is around words that say, please see the attachment. So somebody would then have to come over on the far hand side and open the attachment. Because of this, not only was it a poor user experience for number of clicks, it meant that nothing in the content of the article, 9 times out of 10, was getting indexed. So the only thing being searched was the title. So we use this to make a preliminary business case to investigate and select a new technology. And we got the go-ahead to do that. So we began by gathering feedback and pain points. And what we quickly realized is that while we got feedback on both the search and the request side of functionality, by addressing the search side first, we had a couple of wins. The first is that only search was approved to be client-facing by our legal team. So we would be helping in-house as well as helping our clients. The second is we knew out in the marketplace there were ready-built tools for it. So we'd be looking at a known set of functionality. The third, and far be it from the least important, is that by getting better knowledge articles and knowledge content, because realistically some of what we have at this point is video, by getting that in place, we would be helping our knowledge request responders respond faster and more consistently. So we gathered that feedback, we used it to develop our requirements. We ended up with a list of about 100 requirements of varying specificity. And then we did some initial online research and demos with about 10 companies. We were quickly able to whittle that down to about 3 companies or 3 options, as well as an option to do nothing and change nothing, which for us is always an option. One of those 3 options was a content management system that was being used elsewhere in-house. It would have required a lot of custom configuration and customization, but it was something that our IT team said they were more than willing to do. The other 2 were dedicated KMS platforms. After deep dive demos, conversations, comparing the pros and cons and all of that fun stuff, we were able to make our selection, get it approved, and move into all of the legal documentation. Ultimately, we selected Bloomfire in the summer of 2021 and began to get to the point where we were signing legal documents and moving forward. The thing to keep in mind is, as a tax and audit and accounting firm, we can't change technology and we can't change process after mid-December. Everything kind of gets on hold as tax season or busy season or what we call opportunity season gets started. So we signed our contract on August 13th and we began the project about 2 weeks later. We had some internal things happening that we needed to account for. Unlike what this timeline, I'll say, visually reflects, we were able to do a lot of work in parallel, which helped from the project standpoint. We used September and then into October to really configure the system. We set up groups for access, we defined our metadata and our categories and our vocabulary. Yes, we were bringing over some level of categorization, but it was something that we hadn't really been happy with and had been trying to change in our previous system and just hadn't gotten the developer support that we needed to make that happen. So we took this kind of as our sign, right? Now is as good a time as any. We also use this time to do test content migrations from our old system into our new system. So I heard your question a minute ago about how'd you get it over? Bloomfire helped us a lot. We did our final content migration right at the end of October, and we immediately turned around and got all of our existing authors and a handful of new individuals trained up, because all of that content that was an attachment, or if it was on page, the images that were an attachment, we wanted it to look a lot nicer. So we used November to do content cleanup, and it was kind of an all-hands-on-deck effort. Everybody was moving over images, bringing in the text that had been attachments and the like. And that was really the focus of that month. And we were able to go live on December 6th, which I think was like 3 days after the project plan said we were going to go live. I consider that a win. And we definitely met our before the middle of December goal. So that's all great and wonderful, but so what? We saw some immediate gains while we were implementing the system, and to be quite honest, these were gains we expected and anticipated. It's part of why we selected Bloomfire. Our search experience was immediately improved. We could filter results, we could sort results. Again, it's the little things that until you don't have them, you don't realize how much you take them for granted. And our articles looked a lot better. If nothing else, it's bigger. Realistically, though, the formatting was clean. We were able to apply our brand standards. We were able to put images in line. If you can read the text on this. This is actually a recipe. Because we wanted demoable content, because we wanted test content when we were standing up the project, we did a series of food articles, which kind of have stuck, and we randomly will find new ones getting added. But we saw those immediate gains, and our content creators were extremely happy as they were doing that cleanup. Once we went live, we saw some quick wins as well. The first one is honestly the one that I'm most proud of. Our information security team had been asking for a secure, easy-to-use system for years for their internal documentation. They had full and complete access to the previous system, and they refused to set foot in it. They didn't like how it worked. They were concerned about their content, you name it. As soon as we went live, they approached us and said, we want to learn more. How can we get in? And so we took some time in December, did some deeper dive demos specifically for them, trained them up, and they were able to start adding content as soon as we came back from the holiday. And that was their choice. They could have started adding content before then. When we signed our contract with Bloomfire, we signed a limited licensing agreement for about 3,000 licenses. At the time, we thought that that was a relatively reasonable number with some wiggle room, and within a month of going live, we discovered that was not the case. At the same time, our organization had had a couple mergers and acquisitions, we had made some new hires, and in the expansion of content outside of tax and A&A, we also had a larger client base that we wanted to add. So in the first couple of months of 2022, we were able to make the business case to expand our licensing agreement to an enterprise model where we had unlimited licensing of unlimited types. This also meant that we no longer had to do the license shuffle dance on a daily basis where we went, oh, you're not going to create content this week because you're on vacation? We'll give your author license to somebody else for the week. Our last quick win is that we had faster troubleshooting. Unfortunately for us, this is a little bit anecdotal because our internal help desk at the time did not have any metrics. But anecdotally, again, it was taking us, best case, a couple of days, more often, a couple of weeks to get any sort of bugs fixed in our technology, as well as just to reassign a license. In the new world, in the new environment, we had a couple different teams picking up that technical support. So for single sign-on, our portal team was handling that. They're an extremely responsive team who we've worked to develop some great relationships with so that they stay responsive for us and help us with our tickets. The business was able to own license allocation and reallocation, and then Bloomfire handled the back-end technical tickets. I don't have line of sight into their data on our tickets, but I can say that they're extremely responsive, fast, and when we've had larger issues that we've found, yes, it takes longer, but I've never had to reach out to them to say, hey, what's the status of this? We're always getting communication that lets us know proactively where things are at and when they anticipate they'll be handled. It wasn't just about quick wins. We had wins in our first year as well. I'm not going to run through all the numbers, but the theme here is double. In the first year, we doubled our content, we doubled the business groups that were putting content in, and we doubled our number of content creators. That's not to say that metrics alone show success. We had some major knowledge efforts in that first year that I think went extremely much better because we had knowledge search in a better place. In February of 2022, there was new legislation that impacted a lot of our clients. We learned about it. I think I got pulled into a meeting on a Monday with our tax team, and they were like, what are we going to do? How are we going to let people know? So they started on a Monday. They had content posted by Saturday. Our usage of that content in one day on a weekend quadrupled previous highest usage to date. It was easy to create the content. It was easy to push it out. It was easy to link people to it. In contrast, when PPP loans were a thing a couple of years ago during COVID, we had a similar need to push content out. And it took us 3 months to get that content to a place that we could share it with clients easily. So 5 days, 3 months, there's a little bit of a difference there. Our HR team was another early adopter. We were in the middle of shifting how we work with contractors. And so they put in to Knowledge Search articles about the process for requesting a contractor, what the hiring process looked like, onboarding, offboarding, you name it. On the growth and business development side of our business, we were really looking at the different types of clients that we engaged with and what that meant for how we talked with them, how we sold to them, and the like. And so all of that profile information, what do the different profiles look like? What are some templates for communicating with them? What does that mean for products and services that we offer to them or how we deliver those products and services? All of that content got added to Knowledge Search. And finally, our internal help desk decided to migrate to a new ticketing solution in the fall of 2022, so just over a year ago. In doing that, they had enjoyed being able to find things in Knowledge Search so much that they came to us and said, can we move our content? Sure, but we want people to self-help. So we integrated the two systems, their new ticketing system and Bloomfire on the back end, so that when associates submitted a help ticket, they could have the potential to have articles proactively suggested to them in order to potentially mitigate the ticket. And if they still submitted the ticket, then the agent responding to their ticket would have articles suggested to help them respond. Whoops, sorry about that. All right, I promise I'll get there. I really will. It's not to say everything was sunshine and roses. Realistically, I haven't seen a project yet that is. Our associates still have too many systems. It's the reality of, I think, most of our organizations at this point. I've heard it mentioned a couple times in a couple different sessions. This is honestly something that we're still wrestling with and working through and having a lot of conversations on, so I don't have an answer yet. Our associates have said they just don't have time to create content. We work on charge hours and billable hours. And so we've found a couple ways of making content creation an impact time thing so it counts for the same value when it comes to performance reviews. Our training for the first year was very ad hoc and on demand, and a lot of me sitting down with one person for 45 minutes and explaining how to do things. Not a good use of my time, not a good use of anybody else's time. So we shifted to scheduled trainings last year, and we anticipate over the next year to create some on-demand, hands-on opportunities for learning. Our governance is shifting. We're in the middle of trying to become more flat. I don't want to say democratic, but really giving people an opportunity to hear news and updates firsthand, as opposed to me telling a handful of people who then tell a handful of people, and so on and so forth. It's also giving people a place to come and share their feedback and ideas and best practices. Our clients are seeing some access issues. This is not because of Knowledge Search. It's because of what we have the access tied to. And that tool actually is getting a major overhaul before the end of this month. So we're hoping this one just goes away. We're also working on building trust in a different medium. Our clients have been very, very reliant over the lifespan of our organization on very personal communication. That is not something we want to lose. We just want to make sure that they're able to get help when they want it, even if it's the middle of the night. So shifting that mentality. And speaking of shifting mentality, and I promise this is my last slide, at Wipfli, perspective changes everything. This is our brand tagline, and it's something that we have really observed over the course of this technology change. On the consulting side of the business, they've shifted from a very siloed mentality to one where they want everybody in consulting to see their documentation. Our tax and audit and accounting side, which has been very open in sharing their information, but very client-specific, right? They only want to answer things if it's about that specific client in that specific situation. They have become more and more open to creating knowledge content that is applicable to clients that look like this this industry, this demographic, and allowing the individuals who work with specific clients to append the knowledge with any sort of smaller detail and then reference the bigger picture. This consistency in content has decreased our risk, and so we've brought risk along on the ride. And most importantly for us, we have used this project as kind of our proof of concept that we don't have to build every single piece of technology in-house from scratch every single time. Sometimes it makes more sense not to. So we've had a lot of perspectives being shifted, and they're continuing to shift. And I think one of the biggest ones, and this one hopefully rings true for everybody here, it's not that we are selling our services or certain products, it's really that knowledge and our expertise is our product. And that is something that we've been able to kind of bring everybody along on the ride for with Knowledge Search. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we have like 1 minute if there's a question. Otherwise, lunch is in the Enterprise Showcase. You must have your tickets with your badge. But if there are any questions for any of our speakers, okay, at the back.
Did you consider any other solutions besides Bloomfire?
Yeah, we did demos with about 10 organizations. We came down, we had like a list of top 3. One of them was a CMS, another one was a dedicated KMS provider, and then Bloomfire.